Welcome to another installment of This Is Not Normal on the Political Drain podcast with Drill Sergeant Doug, aka Admin Doug, a U.S. Army veteran, teacher, musician, and family man from Jamaica, now fights for justice and democracy through commentary and humor. Follow him on YouTube at Political Drain and at Sons of Liberty Official as Drill Sergeant, aka Admin Doug, continues to protect our freedoms.
What's up, YouTube? Drill Sergeant here, and of course, we have with us the illuminated, the educated, the beautiful and charismatic Brown Girl Pride, BGP, notorious.
You're too nice. No, thank you.
It's what it is. I call it like I see it, and we are back for another one of these educations, people. You know what we do here. I promised you that we're not just about yelling and giving the knife hand to these MAGA folks, but we also have to be about community. We have to be about what's coming next after this thing collapses and falls, as you know it's going to, especially now as we see that there's no more fertilizer coming through the Strait of Hormuz. Now that we see that all of the people who you were using as slave labor to pick all the fruits and all of the vegetables are now in concentration camps all around. Now that the farmers are basically losing everything, crops are going to cost more. Diesel costs more to get it to the store. I guarantee you by the end of this summer, you may not be ready for the prices that are coming, and the collapse is on the way. We need to be prepared for what to do next. Last time we had you on, my dear, we were talking about just the beginnings of how to start out with community. Well, what do we call it? Gift economy. A communal gift economy. How it works, how it's structured, how to get it started. This time I want to do something fun, YouTube. Fun for me because I'm a history guy. Because we have the expertise of someone like this with us to talk about First Nations, as we call them, nations or empires. I really want to get into the empire structure of it because I think as we're learning about this more and more, how the structure works of the economy, how the reciprocal economy works, in terms of empires, your mind goes, how? Well, no. And then you say, well, there's an egalitarian political structure. Well, there's a king. How? So I'd like to find out. I want to relate it to what we're talking about here as much as possible. But also, I'm just going to give you the floor to talk about anyone in specific, especially the history, something that I know I'm super interested in. And then we can relate it to actually how the government worked, how their governance worked, and how we can take from it.
Sure, absolutely. I think when it comes to speaking on Indigenous history, especially from the anthropological point of view, um, it comes through from a very Eurocentric place. So terminology gets imposed onto Indigenous cultures that subconsciously has been ingrained into us how to think of empire, right? So there's a difference between empire and imperialism, especially European imperialism. So, an empire, if we're just going to look at the basic breakdown of what an empire is, it is, you know, a culture or people that have expanded out in a larger territory, right? Now, imperialism is how you impose that. Did you come in and were you imposing it through force? Were you imposing it through slave labor? Were you imposing it through genocide? Then that's European imperialism. However, with indigenous empires here, and even a lot of the Pacific Islands, they also had monarchies, but they were not the same as European monarchies. They still, land was first and foremost centered in all of these larger societies, city states. Even using the word city state implies like a centralized kind of governance. And it really was never about that. These individuals, villages grew and they grew, and they worked in reciprocity with each other. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions, is how can you be a large empire without imposing violence upon people, which is part of the erasure, right? It is the it is how colonizers suppressed and erased indigenous history, because in order for people to understand that you can build empires without being oppressive, that would have changed everything. So
Okay,
you see what I'm saying? So getting
I do.
people to understand that if the only way to build an empire is through oppression and violence, then that's how all empires function. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So
Gotcha. Okay, I'd love to know more about what was here before. I believe Aztecs are one of the is what you would call a one of these type of actual empires that were in North America. Is that the case? Is it as Aztecs?
okay, so the three biggest empires that most people think of or bring up would be the Mexica or the Aztec, the Maya, and the Inca. They all
Okay.
function differently. So the Mexica had what was called the Triple Alliance. So there was two other cultural groups that they had an alliance with, which was part of the larger city, and it was a multicultural environment. They were an egalitarian society, and basically tribes around them would pay tribute to the collective of the three, and then the collective of that triple alliance would then distribute out goods and things like that when necessary. Let's say a natural disaster happened and this village over here needed food or supplies or whatnot, and then they would then monitor that and then bring it out, so it would be equally given out to everybody else. The Maya housed many different city states. And so because they had many different city states, each city state, basically each city functioned as their own culture, their own governance, and so forth. So they were just multiple city states all throughout a larger territory. Sometimes they traded with each other, sometimes they even fought with each other, right? And then you had the Inca, which is in South America, and they function as basically like multiple interconnected networks across a large region, with a centralized location where their governance stayed, but the governance itself wasn't centralized.
So we have the Incas in South America, Maya and Aztec in North America. Um, Now, the one that you said was there were um, a a bunch of different kind of cities that sometimes fought each other. Say that one. That's Aztecs.
The Maya.
The Maya. Tell me about. Let me hear some more history about the Maya.
They were all like individual city states, so they had their own cities that had their own specific cultures, so it wasn't one big Maya culture. They all had their own specific cultures, dialects, governance, resources, things like that. Sometimes they allied with each other. Sometimes they would fight with each other. When indigenous people had wars or fought with each other, it was typically due to resources. It was not due to the land itself, but more so to the resources and the sharing of resources. So that's when the other times we would fight would be over typical human, bullshit,
That's my
jealousy,
woman.
all of those things, right?
That's my man. I was like, go ahead.
So I mean, we're not. I'm not, like pushing the utopian world. We had warriors. We obviously had fights and wars because we had warriors.
Uh-huh.
So those things did happen. We weren't perfect, but we were always looking at how to fix mistakes, how to rebuild relationships when those fights occurred and happened. And also, death wasn't the ultimate goal. We weren't out trying to demolish another civilization or culture just because we were in a battle with each other, right? So there was ways about going to war and how we dealt with war very much differently than Europeans. Um, so yeah, I mean, we wouldn't have been able to kick their asses in a lot of these in a lot of these things if we didn't know how to fight.
Yeah.
So There is not a utopian. We're not creating like the perfect governance or the perfect world here, but it is important to understand relationships, conflict resolution, all those things in which they had to tweak and understand and go through their own trials, tribulations, and mistakes in order to do that. Learn from those mistakes, move forward, and get better, right? So yeah, so sometimes those city states would fight each other. Sometimes tribes would fight tribes. So it was a thing that happened.
So even though they're separate city states, and I guess that's how America tried to get every state wanted to still be sovereign somehow, but be under the umbrella of America. And I'm guessing because we know that America took its constitution from a lot of what they learned from Native American governance, but they just did it wrong. But and I mean, you know what? I won't even say wrong because the truth is, I think there's still growth for all kinds. Nothing is perfect. But I was reading that when the Maya, or that when some Europeans came here, and this was in the history, people's history of the United States. We talked about that one before. And the guy, I don't remember his name, but he came here and he brought his boats full of people. And he was able to sow dissent with certain city-states. And I'm thinking that may have been the Maya he was talking about instead of the Aztecs. I wasn't sure which one it was, but now that you say that, that makes more sense because there were some that didn't want to do as much tribute, and there were some that thought they weren't getting back as much as they should have from the tributes that they were giving or whatever. And they found a way to sow dissent and use those dissenting city-states against the major, I guess you'd call it the metropolis portion, right? The downtown state, right? The capital. This is strange. When I heard it, makes more sense now. Do you know anything about that history or who I'm talking about?
You're probably talking about Cortez and the Mexica, the Aztec Empire. So earlier, my mind was going blank, but so the Triple Alliance was of three cities. They weren't all called Mexica. The three cities were Tenochtitlan, which is modern day Mexico City now, then Texcoco, and Tlacopan. So these were three city states that
So
had
it probably
various
was
different
Aztec.
cultures.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
so
I wasn't wrong.
they all had different cultures, but the Tenochtitlan was mostly of the Mexica people, which was kind of the more dominant of the three, if we're going to use the word dominant. Um, uh, but in that case, this is why it got labeled by the Spaniards and everybody else as the Aztec Empire.
Okay.
But yeah, there were tribes that did not want to contribute to tribute or did not want to share their resources with the larger empire. And so there were things that, that created a beef between certain tribes and the larger empire. But it wasn't like what we see in the movie Apocalypto, where they like just go in and just start raiding tribes and grabbing them and sacrificing them to the gods. It's not how it worked. Like there was actual attempts at negotiations. There were, attempts at diplomacy and saying, hey, that this is what we could offer you if you offer us this in return, like all of those things. If that didn't work, then it would be usually like war games, a ceremonial war games where the goal was to capture, not to kill. And then it would escalate into violence. If you had to do everything in your power to not get to violence first. Violence was the last option. So, and even then it wasn't about going out on a genocide spree either, whereas when Europeans came, so they sowed this dissent. They were like, hey, we'll help you. Well, we got your back. We're not going to come in and let the Aztec come in and take your tribute, make you pay tribute. And so, yeah, that sounds good. Like, oh, okay, these people seem cool. They're going to do that. But then the way the Spaniards went about is what changed everything. And then it created that the Tlaxcalans and other groups of indigenous people were turncoats, basically. They turned on their own people, on indigenous people. And by helping take down the Aztec Empire, we allowed for colonialism to happen. So But what wasn't always stated was how the form of savagery that the Europeans brought, and how they turned many of those Tlaxcalan warriors and other indigenous warriors into soldier slaves and used them to go conquer, quote unquote, conquer other tribes and people.
Talk about that. What's the soldier slave mean?
So, in the sense of your debt, like debt peonage, you're going to help us do this. You're going to be a soldier for us. You're going to be, think of scouts. You're going to do this for us. And then we will give you this in return after your service to us.
Yeah.
So that could be holding families hostage. That could be returning land. That could be giving resources. That could be all various different deals that were made to keep them into their service as soldiers, and basically, in a way, forcing them to go help them do the rest of the colonizing that they did.
Yikes. Sounds familiar.
Same tactics used everywhere.
Everywhere. So I want you guys to know, YouTube, I promise you, we're going to get to the other part of the education, which is what we can take from it. And, if you're an astute student, there's something you can take from all of this already. But there's just one more piece that I really want to get into. Tell me about the ball games. One day you said to me, if this didn't go right, then it would escalate to the ball game. And I said, what the heck does that even mean? Please talk about the ball games.
So the ball games and the Mesoamerican ball games, there was actually different kinds of sports that were played all over. You also had counting coup was another one that was done with like a stick. So basically they would paint a stick, they would put dye on it, and then you would hit somebody with the stick to show that you got them. So it wasn't about death, right? Same with ball games. There's this myth and the myth used to be, and they used to push it out there, that the ball games, if you lost, you'd get your head chopped off and be sacrificed to the gods. That's not what happened at all.
Okay.
But they were ball games that sometimes were used to resolve conflict. And so you would have the team from this tribe and the team from over here be like, all right, let's take it to the courts. Let's see what happens. If we win, you start giving us tribute. If you lose, we don't take tribute from you. So those were options that they would use, like I said, as ways to resolve conflict. So, if the negotiations and the talking didn't work, all right, let's take this to sports. Let's take it to this friendly competition. And we'll make our deals from here, shake on it, and the winners win. The losers lose, and that's what it is. And then it would escalate to like war games, like counting coup, things like that, and then it would escalate to actual physical war after that. So yeah, physical war was always the last thing that was, if you could try to prevent that, then you did everything you can before you got to that level.
I love the stages. And, we humans, we're trying to do that now, even though we don't have the right way. There's still an idea that you need to be negotiating first before going to war and stuff like that. It's just that nobody follows the rules. The only rule is who has the most power can do the most negotiating in this world. All right. Thank you so much. We're doing it again. Guys, you're going to see part 1. But if you are a Patreon member or a member of the channel, you'll get the whole thing Wednesday. Thank you so much.
Bye. Have a good one.
Hey, yeah, you. Before you click away to watch someone unbox a tactical toothbrush, let's talk about something real. Political Drain isn't just another content mill. We're a digital front in a very real war. Not with bullets, but with ideas, with action, and with solidarity. We pair urgent news with critical education. And we build community around actual resistance, not the hashtag kind. The kind that moves. But here's the thing. None of this is free. It isn't. Behind every video is time, labor, research, and some weird guy asking if we're going to pay the hosting bill. And yeah, some of that money goes to things we can't necessarily say out loud. If you know, you know. Let's just say Our special ops aren't Call of Duty LARPers. They're people making real moves to protect, uplift, and organize. You're not just funding a channel. You're funding a resistance network in a world where capital still calls the shots. Unfortunately, in a system built on artificial scarcity, even mutual aid has a price tag. And if we want to grow, if we want to win, we need your help. We need your help. So if you've got even a few bucks to spare, toss it our way. It's not for ads. It's not for merch drops, but for people making moves in the shadows so others can do it in the light. It's just us and you. So fund the mission, fund the fight, fund the future, because nobody's coming to save us. We save each other. That's how this works.
That was the Political Drain podcast, which can be heard on www.groovechillradio.com/political-drain and can be viewed on the Political Drain YouTube channel anytime. Once again, thank you for listening to Groove Chill as we resist fascism in any form, pursue democracy, peace, and love.